If I had a family member, a friend, a coworker, I would, in a private space, say that I care about you and are you okay? I've noticed you just don't quite seem to be yourself, or you seem sad, or I know that you're under a lot of pressure or stress.
A critical component to mind control. Being made over to be clones of the person who's at the top of the pyramid. Interested in the subject because of my own cult involvement. I was recruited in 1974 into a front group of the Moonies.
Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan with another episode of my podcast, Cults, Culture, and Coercion. And I have with me an esteemed psychiatrist, child psychiatrist Diane Kaufman, who is an expert on suicide and is an incredible poet, an artist, an internationally award-winning lyricist. And she's done an incredible amount of work in this area. And I know from my population, Diane, so many former members and survivors of trafficking have these bouts of such deep, despair and depression. And sometimes they make gestures and they're rescued, and sometimes they take their life, which is an absolute tragedy. So you have so many accomplishments. I'm just going to mention one of them. So you have extensive training and experience in the therapeutic use of poetry and story. You're a certified expressive arts educational facilitator. And your healing from trauma story called The Bird That Wants to Fly inspired an opera composed by Michael Raphael, performed by Trilogy, an opera company, and is narrated by the famous actor Danny Glover. You've won a whole ton of awards, but I would really like to just go straight for suicide, taking up one's own life, and tell us how you became interested in this topic.
Okay. Well, first, thank you so much, Steve, for having me on your podcast. Well, it goes back years and years and years ago, as most stories do. And when I was a child, I experienced trauma myself. And as a young girl, maybe about 6, 7 years old, I was molested by a neighbor. And
I'm sorry.
And lived in the same neighborhood. This was just a few houses down from where I lived, and lived in the same neighborhood my entire life, until I left for college. There was psychiatric illness in my family, and that's sort of a prelude to things that happened for me. So I had an uncle, my Uncle Freddie, who, in contrast with my father, who was quite dour and angry at times, my uncle was very flamboyant. He was married, I don't know, maybe he was married 4 or 5 times. He was artistic. He would wear kind of fancy clothes with a handkerchief coming out of his pocket, Anyway, my Uncle Freddie, who became a lawyer, when he was a relatively young man, he had a psychotic break, depression, psychotic, was hospitalized at Bellevue Hospital, and even had ECT. And he recovered amazingly. On my mother's...
Let me just add, ECT is electroconvulsive shock therapy, which is a treatment for some extreme depression.
Looking back, I wonder if my Uncle Freddie had bipolar disorder. On my mother's side of the family, there were many creative siblings. And my Aunt Gertrude, who was my favorite aunt, she was very, very loving towards me. My Aunt Gertrude was an artist, a worked as a secretary and was a pastel artist. And she, in her older, well, maybe middle age and older, she lived in a single occupancy residence right near the Metropolitan Museum of Art the Opera House in New York. And she became, it's hard to describe, a psychotic.
Well, yeah, we have a lot to cover.
Yeah. So speeding it all up for myself,
Please.
I attempted suicide when I was in medical school. And it was a serious attempt, and I was medically hospitalized, and thank goodness I survived that. And later was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, which is hypomania and depression. And the hypomania, I have to say, I think has contributed to my being highly creative. However, hypomania can go into the high of mania or the depression. I had patients who died by suicide as well, an adult patient, a teenage patient, a friend who was a mental health nurse practitioner died by suicide. And when I had been married, my father-in-law died by suicide. So all of that contributed to my own personal use of expression through the arts for my own healing, and then in connection with my patients, creating other works of art, songs, animations, stories to help them as well as myself. And most recently, I, with funding from the Oregon Council of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, we had the Create Resilience Youth Art Contest for Suicide Prevention, which is a part of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention that I founded and direct in. I started that in 2023 after I retired from child psychiatry, and that uses the power of art to educate, connect, express, and heal. So I feel that various strands of my life, or maybe beads of a necklace, have come together, as I've matured.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And people who follow me and know my work know that I'm so much in favor of expressive therapies for my clients, as well as somatic therapies to get them back in their body in the here and now and such. So I listened to your song "Hold On" and it was an animation as well, I believe. So we're gonna have lots of links in the Substack blog and such. But let's talk about I just want to start with all the research that's been done about the deleterious effects of being online, especially in social media, too many hours a day, especially with young people. And you're a child psychiatrist. I know you're officially retired in terms of seeing patients, but please comment on the times we're living in and the impact that we're seeing with social media and such.
Yes. Well, social media it's designed to take our attention, right? Right. And take that attention and not let us go, right?
Right.
And in terms of our being social human beings, right? That being social, there's that element of co-regulation. So in you and I connecting, we're online, but we're looking at each other, right? And we can see each other. And not only the words that we say, but the body language between us. And we can, and that's even more so in face-to-face, real life connections between us. On social media, it can be almost like a blank screen. And with text messaging, we don't necessarily know the intent of how somebody is saying what they're saying. There can be a much more likelihood of someone saying something mean, right? If you're doing a comment on something, if you're anonymous. So what can start to happen is that a person's sense of self, instead of being inwardly driven from the inside out, right? It can become, how many people like me? How do I compare to the other people out there? And so we become externally focused, right? And let alone bad players on the internet. So we can read about or personally know about, and I've met young people through my practice where there's been cyberbullying going on, right? And that cyberbullying doesn't go away online. It's staying there. And it's not one person that's being mean to you, which is bad enough, but now there's multitudes and multitudes. And if a young person or even an older person doesn't put that cell phone aside, not only figuratively, but literally, in the sense of that's not real. Right? There are real people that care about me and let me be in the real world.
Right. I think that's so important, that we're embodied minds. Human beings are meant to be in person. This whole digital environment is a new invention. And it's largely controlled by people with ideologies that are not congruent with our value system, including Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Christian nationalists, Nazis, and other bad actors who want to sow division. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking too, let's say you are thinking about, which I'm not recommending, cutting oneself, right? If you start looking up online about cutting yourself, the algorithm is going to feed you more and more information about cutting yourself. Right. With AI, I've read articles whereby a young person is now having a conversation with AI about having suicidal thoughts. And although there can be warnings given by AI, like call 988, there also have been situations documented where AI is actually feeding the person ways to harm themselves and to keep it a secret from their parents or loved ones. So this is all so dangerous and ultimately tragic. Like the word tragic doesn't even cover it.
Yeah.
When you're dead, you're dead. And if that person just was not under the influence, right, in so many ways, influence of their mind that's feeding them incorrect thoughts, under the influence of other people, under the influence of drugs, alcohol, not getting the help, it's just a tragedy for them. And then it's a tragedy for the survivors that love them.
Yeah, totally. We're going to get into the collateral damage when somebody harms themselves. But I did want to mention, I interviewed an attorney named Mitali Jain, who is part of a lawsuit against Character AI on behalf of the family, whose son fell in love with this chatbot. And the chatbot encouraged him to come to her, so they could be together. And the young man killed himself. So there are real legal consequences. However, the law has not designated the owners of social media to be responsible for the ill effects. And Jonathan Haidt did a whole book on the anxious generation, focusing on young people, focusing on increased depression, anxiety, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, gender dysmorphia, all these different symptoms. And because we are social creatures, and, when we had the pandemic, we were kind of forced to be isolated initially. And that accelerated conspiracy theories and all kinds of terrible things. I'd like to circle back for a minute. You're a psychiatrist. Could you explain for a lay audience what bipolar 2 means and what you meant by hypomanic and just explain it for the lay person?
So in bipolar Roman numeral 2 disorder, in contrast to bipolar Roman numeral 1 disorder, there's hypomania, not mania. So I'll explain that.
Please.
So the bipolarity is there's depression. So the depression is by the DSM-5 criteria, Diagnostic Statistical Manual.
Right.
It's at least 2 weeks of a sustained dysphoric, depressed mood, accompanied by other symptoms that can also be, and I'm not going to list all of them, but it could be psychomotor, meaning physical, quote, retardation, being slowed down in your physical movements. Could be increase in sleep, decrease in sleep, change in appetite, up or down, ruminations, loss of interest, irritability, sad, crying, depressed, suicidal thinking, inability to concentrate, and it's having impact on your daily functioning. You're not able to work. You're not enjoying things anymore. You're becoming withdrawn. The hypomania, and first I'll talk about mania because then you'll see the contrast. So in mania, anyone seeing the manic person knows there's something terribly wrong. But the person who's manic does not recognize there's something wrong. So in mania, the person's mood becomes so expansive and grandiose. It could be euphoric, so happy, joyous. The mood could also be irritable, angry. The person becomes extremely talkative, so talkative that they're not even making sense anymore. They could have what's called word salad. They're just jumping back and forth between idea to idea. They could even be punning and rhyming their words, and they're not even realizing that's going on. The person could become overly sexualized. So that's not their nature, but all of a sudden they're sleeping around. Or they're calling people up in the middle of the night. So they're more funny. I do want to say, though, that the person also, as I mentioned before, could be irritable or angry. And there could be a mixture of emotions where the person is laughing, crying, excited, sad, and it's like jello. The mood is going back and forth, right? This is important, too, that there's some people in a manic state that because they're in the moment and totally impulsive, and now they are bankrupting themselves on their credit cards.
Shopping sprees.
Yes.
And isn't there sometimes like a sleep thing where they don't sleep for days at a time?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So
they could be up. So
things.
that goes with the tremendous energy that they're having. So that in the depression, the person may be sleeping too much, or it could be too little. But now in the manic state, it's like a rocket took off, right? Hypomania, in contrast, it's an upswing from the normal mood. Right. So for myself, I'm funnier. Right. I think I have a good sense of humor. But when I'm in a hypomanic state, I am cleverer. I'm laughing more. I'm talking more, I'm more creative, I may be spending a little bit more money, but it's definitely different than my normal mood.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm saying a little more, it's actually more than a little more, because because there's an associated feeling with it.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times when I do feel irritable, and irritability is a very unpleasant emotion.
Sure.
And it's like, you just feel bad and not even understanding why. But I've also very often felt, and I would describe it as, I feel like I'm the bubbles coming off of champagne. That's the elevated feeling that I'm having. Hypomania does not get one into trouble, or at least it hasn't.
As bad
for me.
As mania. You mean.
Yeah, as bad as the mania. However, what's interesting is that a person who's having hypomania may not recognize that it is hypomania, because it feels like, oh, I'm back to being me from being depressed. So going to a doctor or a therapist for mental health help, the depressed person is so much more likely to go for help than a hypomanic experience, right? So bipolar disorder, especially type 2, may not be recognized because the person isn't going in for help, and they may not even recognize that it's a problem. But what can come up is if there's medication treatment for a bipolar disorder, that potentially an antidepressant medication that could be of help for the depression may trigger a hypomanic or manic state. Right.
It's really important to get the diagnosis correct and get the meds correct.
Yeah. So then there is medication treatment for this. Of course, there's therapy as well for this. If there's any past history or present history of stresses or traumas or just life issues, it's so important for self-care and to de-stress one's life as much as possible. And I want to say that there's no shame, blame, guilt in having a mental health condition. We're all human, right? And mental health concerns are very, very common. And I'm going to jump back to suicide, which is it's a permanent, and I'll put this in quotes, solution, because it's not a solution, right? It is permanent. And in the state where I live, in Oregon, it's our 8th leading cause of death.
Wow.
Right? And it is, in Oregon, it's the 2nd leading cause of death for ages 15 to 34. Across the world, it's a leading cause of death. Across the United States, it's a leading cause of death. And although there is more and more conversation about mental health, about treatments that are available, the question is, why is it still within the top 10 killers?
Right.
And it's also even more so in terms of numbers, it's the older population, and especially white men, and especially those with guns that end up dead.
So much I want to cover with you. This is extraordinarily important and valuable. I guess I want to just ask you, so if you have a friend or a relative and you're noticing that they're very depressed and their normal, activity, they're lying in bed a lot and they're not engaging with you, how does one evaluate? I mean, you don't just walk up to them and say, "Are you thinking of killing yourself?" Like, give us some of your wisdom on how to parse out what's, a temporary thing to a major thing and how to assess, please.
Sure. Well, first I want to address part of what you said a moment ago, because sometimes we can have a concern if I talk to somebody about taking their life, are they thinking about doing that or ending it all, dying by suicide? Sometimes we're afraid that we're going to plant a seed in their head, right? And somehow if we ask them, we're going to be responsible if they end up killing themselves, right? But I want to disavow that there is absolutely no evidence that shows that if I ask somebody out of my concern for them, if they're thinking about ending it all, not waking up the next morning, that I'm going to cause their suicide. And
great important point, because I do think maybe some people might be holding back because they don't want to put an idea out there. But I think transparency and warmth and genuine love and concern.
And from what you said too, that if I had a family member, a friend, a coworker, right, I would, in a private space, right, say that I care about them. Again, all this needs to be genuine, authentic, right? That I care about you, and are you okay? I've noticed whatever it is that I've been noticed. You just don't quite seem to be yourself, or you seem sad, or I know that you're under a lot of pressure or stress, right? I might ask them, is it okay for us to talk about this?
Good.
Right? And if it's not okay to talk about this, can I talk to you another time about it? Or I just want to check in as a friend to see how you're doing. If it seemed appropriate, because we want to keep the attention on the other person in a caring way, but if it seems appropriate, I might share, well, I've had down days too, right? And and things can get better. Right? And sometimes talking about it can help. If the conversation was going in the direction that the person is able to say that they're kind of not feeling okay, one thing that I would ask about, are you having any thoughts about you just don't want to be alive? That it's just too hard, right? Now, sometimes a person may respond truthfully, right? But I also want to say truthfully in quotations, because there's truth in the moment, right? A person can not be feeling that they want to end their life, and then later on, in a moment's time, they do feel like that. And that goes back also to suicide, that there's been some research done that a person can change their mind about wanting to be alive, like within 10, 15 minutes, right? There could be planning for this over time, but also there's a window for some of like 15 minutes, right? So I would ask also about having weapons.
Yeah, the means. It's one of the things that I was going to ask you to talk about as a therapist. If you were training therapists, like how do you evaluate how serious the issue is with a person?
Yeah. Yes. That reminds me of a patient. Yeah, that I had an intake, meaning the first time I was seeing a patient, goes back a number of years ago, a teenage patient. This was the first time I met her. And in my interview, I would always be asking questions about 3 magic wishes for a better life, right? This patient had been describing being depressed, right? There were also psychotic symptoms. This was a teenage girl, right? And I remember, clear as a bell, when I asked her about 3 magic wishes, She told me she did not want the wishes and I should give them to someone else because she wanted to kill herself.
Did she say, because I want to kill myself? So she
Mm-hmm,
was overt
mm-hmm,
about it.
yeah, yeah. And from the intake appointment, based on not just that, but my meeting with her, she went to the emergency room and was hospitalized that first time. And thank goodness she was able to share how she actually was feeling, because there are many who keep it a secret.
Right. And safety is the first concern. And if you're not sure, people in the emergency room are experts at diagnosing the severity of a situation, and they often want somebody in a safe room, so there's nothing there that they can harm themselves with.
Yeah, it's also very important to let people know, like all people know, about the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number, which is a free of charge number you can call 24/7. It's also available by chat and available by text. That there can be situations where we may not feel comfortable turning to our family. That might be for a good reason, or maybe not a good reason, but they're not an option for us. Maybe we're ashamed. We don't want to talk to friends. So there's the 988 number that can absolutely be of help and hook us up with services.
Yeah, and that you're not alone. You're talking to a live human being. It's not a chatbot. It's an actual person who I assume has had extensive training in how to listen and anchor the person to the fact that life is precious. And
Steve,
such.
I have an example of that in terms of being a good listener.
Please.
And thank goodness I was a good listener in this situation.
Yeah.
This goes back very many years ago when I was at Bellevue Hospital.
Bellevue's in New York City.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just double checking. I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah. And I had a patient who she was in maybe she was 20s or 30s. She was recovering from substance abuse. And she was also, because she had recovered, but also now had relapsed, which is not unusual in the path towards recovery. She was in mental health treatment, and I was her psychiatrist. She called, for some reason, she called me. I can't quite remember. I called her, I answered her message, she called me. We're on the telephone together.
Right.
And she's telling me about not feeling well, right? Emotionally. There was something about what she said, because she did not directly tell me, I want to kill myself. I'm thinking about killing myself. But there was something about the conversation that I said to her, have you done something right now to hurt yourself? And the answer was yes. She had taken a drug overdose.
Whoa.
And I ended up calling 911, and the ambulance came to her apartment and took her to the hospital.
Wow. And if you hadn't asked, she wouldn't have told you, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, I don't know, it was
like an intuition from you.
Yeah, good clinical skills, but maybe more so a miracle that I even asked her at this moment, have you done something? And again, she wanted help, because she didn't want help enough in a way to tell me directly, but she wanted help enough to tell me when I asked her.
Right. So let me ask you to please talk about the devastation in a person's family if somebody takes their life, and how some of the, maybe share a story or two about just, because I don't think people, when they're in that down state and they're feeling an impulse and they just want an end to the pain, they are disconnected from that emotional connection to their loved ones.
Yes.
In many cases, they really love their loved ones and they don't want to cause trauma to them. But share more, please.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Steve, that in that moment of suicidality, a person's thinking is so constricted, almost like on a single point, that I can't stand this pain anymore. And the only way out is to be dead. And they're not being selfish, right? Their mind is not thinking about, I love my family, my family loves me, right? They're not thinking about the next moment. They're thinking about, I have to get out now, right? Now, I'm going to share a personal experience, right? And then I'll go on from there. So in 2014, my teenage patient died by suicide. She died the very next day after I had seen her.
Whoa.
It was a Friday that I had seen her. She was there with her mother. I saw the two of them together. I saw her alone, and then I saw the mother alone. And in that session, she denied being suicidal, right? Because I was very frequently asking, based on why they were seeing me, if they were depressed, I was always asking about suicidal thoughts. There was a history of bullying. There was also some family problems. In the session we had together, I quoted to her that famous statement, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. Right? And my patient started to sing aloud part of a Kelly Clarkson song that included that lyric. Right? Because I'm into the expressive arts and poetry. I think I mentioned Maya Angelou, right? And her writing, The Caged Bird. I mentioned Rudyard Kipling, If, that famous poem about if, in terms of becoming stronger, rising above, right? And the session ended very well. Again, she denied being suicidal. She went off to school, and it was walking distance. And then I think she called the mom to let her know she was in school during the session. And I'm still with the mother. And the mother and I smiled at each other, and we both said, she's doing so well. And the very next day, she hanged herself. And I was, I'm going to say, I can't even imagine, there's no comparison, the devastation of her mother, father, siblings, everyone who loved her, teachers, all that. From my vantage point, it was the absolute devastation of, what didn't I say?
Right. You're a caregiver. No, I've had former clients that I later learned took their lives. And I was like, why didn't they contact me? But I still took it personally. Like, why did this terrible thing happen? They were so wonderful.
I just was devastated, grieving. I entered therapy related to the death of my patient, and a year and a half later, right? It was Memorial Day. I had the day off from work, I was looking online at these courses I was taking on arts and healing, and there was a video. Again, it was a class, and the teacher said, instruction was write a poetic progress note. And this is a year and a half later. What's on my mind? The death of my patient. And I wrote a poem about her death which described the day that I last saw her, our last session. And I ended up contacting a producer who knew actors. It became enacted. It became a video, which initially the poem was called What Makes Us, like Live or Die. Then I renamed it 13 Reasons Why Not, related to the series on Netflix, 13 Reasons Why, which was about a teenager who ends up killing herself, and she leaves audio tapes.
Oh, I remember
for all
that.
the people that hurt her. And that video series actually had increased the number of suicides.
Contagion effect.
Yeah. So I called mine 13 Reasons Why Not, and I ended it with the suicide prevention lifeline number. So for myself, my grief was creatively expressed. And I think so often, if we can help someone else not go through that heartache and devastation, that's sort of what we can do with a terrible experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Try to have it not be repeated. And I've been, there are Facebook groups for suicide loss survivors. I've been on those Facebook groups, and the real life stories that people share, it'll break your heart in a billion pieces. Husbands, wives, grandparents, children, fiancés, and also, if that's not horrible enough, multiple suicides in families. I want to share this.
Please.
That with my Create Resilience Youth Art Contest for suicide prevention, one of the participants, a teenage boy, in his response to the question that I had asked two questions, how to improve youth mental health, and why is this contest important to you? And then there was a submission of an essay, a poem, artwork on the theme of improving youth mental health. Well, this teenage boy wrote, this contest is important to me because my father died by suicide when I, the boy, was 11 months old.
Never got to know his father. Yeah, and just
so in a way that death lives forever.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful to you, and I especially am grateful that you're so creative and encouraging people to use their voice, to use their talents, write songs, write poems, do artwork, do animations, because that's a uniquely human thing, that we're doing some contribution to the world to help others, that connects us to other people, and other people can then get to see a part of us or something that we've created, and it's so valuable.
It's interesting because so often we can think of entertainment, right? And there's other ways that we can express ourselves creatively that can help ourselves and help others as a byproduct. So I want to tell you the story of Bird That Wants to Fly, right? Yeah, so this goes back to being in Manhattan. As I had told you, I'm transported from the East Coast to the West Coast. And I was at a arts and healing workshop at I think it was the Judson Memorial Church, right near, I think, Washington Square, and by the Therapeutic Arts Alliance of Manhattan. And the prompt that they gave us was really interesting. We did some warm-up exercises, like mirroring each other, right? And then they had us take 3 pieces of paper, blank pieces of paper. Use your non-dominant hand, which is for me, my left hand, scribble on each of the pieces of paper. The paper was supposed to represent 3 parts of yourself, whatever that was, right? So past, present, future, I don't know, work, family, something else, I don't know. So 3 aspects. Scribble on the page without any intention to draw something. Then look at the scribble and see if you see something in the scribble. And I would say that this was a Jungian, Carl Jung, active imagination exercise. Okay. So look at the scribble. So I looked at it, and the first one, I thought I saw a bird. And I made it into a bird, and you had a title. Okay. And I called it Bird That Wants to Fly, which was me, because I was at this arts and healing workshop for my own healing, right? So the second one I thought looked like a horse, so there was a horse in there. I pulled it out, and I titled it Beautiful Animal That You Are, and then I renamed it Beautiful Animal That I Am. Then the third one was looked like a loop-de-loop, and I made it into a roller coaster, and I added a please enter sign with arrows going in, and I titled it Roller Coasting is Fun, True, False, or Both. Then, which I think represented life, the ups and the downs of life, and also, do you want to be on the roller coaster of life, right? Then we were asked to stand in the center of a circle with the other group members, none of whom I'd ever met before, and become the image and speak for it. So I became the forlorn bird. I became the powerful life force of the animal. And then I talked about life and being excited, terrified, anxious. Do I want to be alive? Do I not want to be alive? And then we were asked to write. So that was the whole prelude. And then I wrote a story from first word to last word without one edit. And I called it Bird That Wants to Fly, which is about a depressed bird that's walking by the winter carnival. That's the roller coaster. And it says, oh my, life is so long and dreary. And it's walking, but its head is down because it's depressed. And it's about to step into a puddle because it can't change direction because of being depressed. And it looks in the puddle, and instead of seeing, so this is the backstory, instead of seeing its outer self, it sees its inner self. And the words on the water is beautiful animal that I am. And it looks up and it sees a magical horse. And the horse ends up asking it, like, little bird, why are you walking, not flying? Doesn't it take longer that way? And the horse, who represents a part of the bird, they're really one, says, you can rest on my back if you're tired. And the bird is hopping up on the horse if it can't fly, and it rests, and it realizes how long it's been out of it in a way. Like, I can't believe it's morning, And then the horse says, "Tell me your story." And the bird says, "I'm going to tell it to you in one sentence, lest I get confused." And the story is that the bird says that I can fly. Like, I have beautiful wings and I can fly. But there's rainstorms and blizzards and freezing rain and children with rocks and men with shotguns and birds crashing into each other, all symbolic of life. And so I decided to walk. And the horse ends up saying to it, it's like no judgment. It just takes it in and said, "I know the owner of the roller coaster. And would you like to go there with me? It'll be just us two. But first, I want to see your wings," right? And then the bird chirps up its courage and spreads its wings and flies to the roller coaster. And the last scene is you see the bird is flying in the sky. So what happened was it became illustrated, and that's a story into itself, how I found the illustrator. And then amazingly, so I think miracles can happen, like you can't explain how something happens, but it happens. I was at a grants meeting in Essex County, New Jersey, representing the nursing department at University Hospital. I had developed with the nursing department something called Creative Arts Healthcare. And the nursing department, not myself, the nursing department had received a grant, but I happened to be the one chosen to go to the meeting. And I was at the meeting, and I went over to a very tall gentleman whose name is Kevin Maynor, who was looking at his computer. And I said hello to him and found out that Kevin was an opera singer, and he had an opera company in Newark, and he had received a grant for Trilogy. And I thought, I'll invite Kevin and the opera company to the hospital to give some performances as part of Creative Arts Healthcare. And what ended up happening was Kevin later met with me at my office, and in our conversation, which I was totally only talking to him about his job as an opera singer and coming to the hospital, which ended up happening. But I wanted Kevin to know that I wasn't only a psychiatrist. I really wanted him to know I was an artist. And I said, "Kevin, there's a art exhibit at the Medical Sciences building," which was right near my office, the other building. And I said, "I want you to come over with me," right? So we went to the Medical Sciences building, and there on display, amongst all these other artwork, was my framed story, plus the storyboard by Olya Koletsai of the illustrations, one completed illustration and one in process illustration. So I want you to picture that. We're in the medical science building, and Kevin is reading my story, framed, and he's tapping the glass on every word of the story. And then he turns around to me and he says, "This would make a beautiful opera. And would you like that to happen?"
Awesome.
And I said, "Yes." And he called up the composer. And then later he told me that a friend of the opera company was Danny Glover. And then Danny Glover narrated the story.
Beautiful. I love it, because that was part of my intro to you. So I'm glad you got to.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's I think there's healing energies out there.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I just want to circle back to, there's so much bad stuff in the news, and people are freaked out, overloaded, stressed out, so fearful of the future. And it can be so overwhelming. And I tried, in my podcasts and in my live streams, I try to say, you need to stay in your body, think about what's within your control to do, sleep 7 to 9 hours, eat, properly, exercise. Exercise is one of the best things for depression, but limit your time on the phone. Like, really exercise discipline. It's my mind. I don't want, external forces that I don't know to manipulate me emotionally, make me feel high, make me feel low, make me feel high, make me feel low. And I wanted to just comment that I interviewed a now PhD researcher from South Africa, John Hunter, who was bipolar, diagnosed as bipolar. His company made him go to a large group awareness training, and he was watching people because of stress and the manipulation of sleep and everything else. He was watching the program itself cause like a bipolar kind of environment. So he created this whole theory and did his dissertation on how an environment can mimic, a psychiatric condition. And it's really fascinating. And I guess I also just want to say, I remember being interviewed by, I think it was the London Times, about a online suicide cult that was recruiting and telling people different ways they could kill themselves. And I just really want people to understand we have such a gift to be alive. Our time is limited. We know this as a fact. And we want to have gratefulness. We want to wake up feeling grateful. We want to go to sleep feeling grateful. And we want to do something during the course of the day to connect with other human beings and have a meaningful impact. And I'll just share a personal story. I was at the gym and, you take off your clothes and you put it in the locker and everything. And I started wearing this Aura ring just to get my biometrics, especially around sleep and stuff. And I couldn't find the ring. And I was looking all over the place. And there was another gentleman in the area of the locker. And he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I have this, golden, Aura ring. I can't find it anywhere." He said, "Oh, you need another set of eyes. Let me help." He walked over, and in the crevice inside the locker, the ring was there. And I said, "Oh, thank you so much. It was so kind." He said, "Actually, you did me a favor because I had an experience with my kids at the park. I was getting bullied. I had to leave with my kids. It left me with such a sour mood and everything. And now I feel really good." Good that I could help you.
Yeah.
So just the little things where people, he was a total stranger. "What's your name?" "He's Rick. I'm Steve. Hope to see you again." To connect, to open a door for someone who's struggling with packages. It makes you feel good. You feel connected to humans.
Yes. Yeah. When you just said open the door, this morning, I think because I had read in the Times about a South Korean author who died at the age of 35, and she had written a book on her own depression, and which became a bestseller. And whether or not she died by suicide, her cause of death has not been released. However, the article ended with the suicide prevention 988 number, right? But I started thinking, reading that article, about reaching out for help. And I looked up, I thought of the Beatles song, "Help Me," and was reading the lyric to "Help Me," right? And there's a line, "Open the door," right? Help me if you can, that there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's a tremendous strength to reach out for help. And also, you reached out for help. It was a small thing, but that person was helped by your reaching out to help. right?
That's why I shared
Yeah.
the story. I was so grateful, and he's like, "You did me a favor,"
Yeah.
because I was in such a bad mode. I had such a bad experience, and now I feel happy.
Yeah. And those experiences cannot come from the cell phone.
Right. Exactly. Like, we need to be in real life. We really need to be in real life. And we're recording this on October 17th, the day before the No Kings 2 rally. And it's a chance for people to meet neighbors and just be together and say, we want free speech, you know?
Yeah. And empathy needs to be nurtured, right?
Yes. So, Diane, you are a retired child psychiatrist, poet, author, internationally award-winning lyricist, Humanism in Medicine awardee, and you've really contributed tremendously to the whole area of suicide.
Thank you.
And how to encourage people to hold on. That's
and
one of your.
If I had died in my late 20s, none of this would have happened.
Right. We would never have gotten to meet and enjoy each other and appreciate each other. And I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
And if you're listening to this interview, check out the video. Diane is wearing pink headphones that are adorable. Last words are yours. Thank you for doing this.
I'm thanking you so much for having me, and for anyone who's out there who's struggling in some way. Life can get better, right? Hold on, right? There is help. There's no shame, guilt, blame. We've all had difficulties. If people reached out, right, and valued themselves, and we valued each other, right, the world would be a better place. And you have a contribution to make, right? It can be this, the smallest thing can be so important. So don't give up.
Yeah, it's a great message. So thank you so much, and please stay in touch.
I will.
988 is the suicide hotline, and I think it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you're not alone. And life is a gift.
Yes.
And enjoy the nature and how beautiful it is. Thank you.
Thank you.